Remember drag racing in the 60s when the great superstock legends were born? Then came the forerunner of the modern-day funny car, the altered wheelbase AFX cars. And remember drag racing's Woodstock, the legendary Superstock Nationals. Once each year, this historical event is remembered at Frank Spittle's Superstock Reunion, a celebration of memories from Norwalk Raceway Park. Stay tuned for Inside Drag Racing Superstock Reunion coverage next. If you stopped by the drag strip and it was filled with legendary superstock cars, altered wheelbase AFX cars, old stockers like SS396s, 442 Oldsmobiles, GTOs, then you found front engine dragsters and yes, even AA fuel altereds, it can only mean one thing. You're at the Flowmaster Muffler Superstock Reunion. Hi again, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Inside Drag Racing, coming to you from Norwalk Raceway Park and Frankie Spittle's famous Superstock Reunion. I'm Ted Jones, and we're going to take you back into the 50s and 60s in the heydays of drag racing when the stars and the cars ran every weekend at drag strips all across America, when it was affordable and fun to go drag racing. And one of the most challenging cars, if not one of the most exciting cars, were AA fuel alters. Pure heaven, pure hell, Marcellus and Borscht, just to name a few. And then, of course, there was the Rat Trap. Now, you may not have known too much about Don Green back then, although he actually started racing this car back in the late 60s up through about 1972. Don, you started this insanity back in the late 60s. Why a AA fuel altered? I mean, those things are crazy.
I don't have any sense, probably. No, I just kind of graduated into that class. I run a 32, the Belong Chrysler on gasoline, and then I just got mixed up with the wrong people, I think.
Now you have a new partner who drives the car. Did you used to drive it back then?
No, I never have driven it. I got better sense than that.
All right, he's saying you don't have better sense. You drive this thing. How's it handle, Ron?
Well, it's not too bad. It's not very forgiving, I will say that. If it makes a move, it has a mind of its own and kind of wants to go wherever it wants. But that's part of the challenge of these cars. That's really part of the mystique of these cars is no two runs are ever alike. It's a new race every time you go to the starting line.
And I assume it's a stupid question, but have you ever had this thing out of shape?
Well, unfortunately, we did. We had a little mishap last year in Oklahoma City, and we hope we don't do that again. We think we've made the corrections, and so we won't have another problem like that. But by and large, this really handles very well for a fuel altered. Remember, the wheelbase is extremely short, the center of gravity is very high, and all of that adds to the handling problems that are inherent with these cars. Frankly, though, because of the way this car is engineered, we can jack some weight into it, and so we have a bit of an advantage, and we're able to adjust the car for track conditions.
What's the quickest this car has been?
So far, we've run a 717, 215, but we haven't made a full pass yet.
So with modern technology and the aluminum block, can we get in the sixes?
I think so, but we don't have any computers or any of that stuff. It's just like I ran it before.
How much nitromethane do you run?
85%.
Now, because of high attrition, they've had to abandon the original 392 Chrysler configuration. Oh, it's still a Hemi. It still has the original cast iron heads, but they've had to go to a 417 Donovan block because they break them so much. As a matter of fact, when Ron was telling you about being out of shape and on his side, it was probably because one of those old iron 392s blew up. However, if you want to enjoy something, try to go to your local drag strip when they're match racing and having one of these AA fuel alters. If you didn't see them back in the 60s, believe me, you missed, without question, probably one of the most wild and exciting and exotic cars ever to grace the quarter miles all across America. Now, this whole thing is presented by Flowmaster Mufflers and Superstock and Drag Illustrated, now known as Drag Racing Monthly.
back at the Museum of Drag Racing, and I'm in my personal shop in the back where you see right here a 1962 Dodge Max Wedge. Now, I'd been with Chrysler engines for a while, but it wasn't until 1961 that I really got involved with the Chrysler Corporation. And that's when Dodge gave me this 1962 Max Wedge to go race. Pat and I raced that thing all over the southern part of the United States, and we won a lot of races with it. And I'm telling you, we had some real fun. Well, we traded it in on our 1963 Dodge Max Wedge, and the 62 got away. So a few years ago, at an auction here at the museum, we found a real nice dry 1962 Texas car. So we purchased it and have now recreated the original Max Wedge that we had in 1962. And we intend to take it out on the tour and show it and run it and have a good time with it. It's like a time machine. Pat and I sit in this thing and we just go back to our youth. You know, nothing more exciting than that. Anyway, I've been with Mopar for a long time. We love Mopar parts on Chrysler automobiles. How long have I been with Mopar? How about this beautiful old box? Got a bearing in it that I purchased at the Mopar parts dealer in 1959. They worked for me then, and they'll work for you now.
Back in Norwalk, Ohio, as we continue our coverage of the Flowmaster Mufflers Super Stock Reunion, we're down in the Top Fuel pits. But since this is a nostalgia event, these Top Fuel dragsters are like they used to do it back in the 60s. Front engine style. Remember the old 392 Chryslers? Well, they're not 392s, they're 417s now, but they're about like they were back there. This particular car is owned by Mike Fuller, driven by Bill Dunlap. Why a front engine dragster? Didn't anybody tell you these things are dangerous?
Hey, that's what I grew up with. Back in the 60s, I drove front-mounted cars, and Mike and I raced together in the early 70s, and I haven't got it out of my system. It's to me, it's a lot more fun.
How quick has this car gone?
598 is our best AT at 238 miles an hour is our best mile an hour.
All right, so you've broken into fives like Romine, only he wasn't happy. He went over and got the rear engine deal and got with Clayton and did the whole bit. You guys gonna do that?
Oh, I kind of doubt it. This is a lot of fun to me. Although I think going 300 miles an hour would be a lot of fun. I'd enjoy that, but there's nothing like sitting in one of these cars.
Mike, you're campaigning the old style front engine dragsters. Why?
Well, I guess the main reason is that the late model cars are awful expensive, and it's a full-blown tour thing, and the way the fuel systems are and stuff nowadays on the late model cars, you got to run them every week, and so that means you're going to be gone 9 months a year on a tour. So, and I guess I'm more of a retirement mode. I haven't got into that.
But you came all the way from California to Ohio for this race.
That's right. We come out here at least, we try to come out once a year. We were out here last year, ran St. Louis, and then the good guys have a race at Indy on the 17th of June. So we're going to come out for this race and then go to Indy from here, and then we'll go back home.
Now, it costs about $1.5 million to run a modern-day, fully blown rear-engine top fuel dragster, as opposed to the old front engine style with these limitations. How much would this thing cost to campaign?
I would say if you watch your costs and depending on how many people you got to fly in and out, probably do it for $150,000, $200,000 a year.
You know, Paul Romine once said these things are actually more fun to drive because you really do drive a front-engine dragster. And as you heard, they're a lot more economical. Why? Limitations. You see, speed and power costs money, and it means a lot of exploded parts. Now, they have limitations that really work on this. One magneto, for instance, you're limited to a 671 blower, although this is a BDS updated version. He's running a 417 Donovan, which is kind of a bulletproof block. They're allowed 450 cubic inches. The rear end ratio is limited to 390, and they can only have a 17 gallon per minute fuel pump. You take all of that, it causes severe limitation. Oh yes, the tire size, only 12 inches wide, and you'll notice no wing. There's no point in making any more horsepower than you can hook up and use. Bottom line is, you can run in the fives, have a good time, and it doesn't cost you a king's ransom.
Schubert. Well, the old reliable entry of Jim Sellers. Bel Air Bubble Top, owned by, and you guys are from Delaware, Newark, Delaware. Jim Sellers, welcome to Norwalk Raceway Park. Well, up next, and this is an original Candies and Hughes entry. A 1965 AFX Plymouth entry. Well, Jerry Walsh in his Mr. 409. Well, the man who needs no introduction here in Norwalk Raceway Park, he's a national event winner. Bruce Larson in his USA 1. And Bruce, actually, I think when he was teamed up with Don Garland's won top fuel here at our August IHRA World Nationals. And class act, Bruce Larson. And he is having lots of fun in his Camaro. Rod Horn, the Armageddon. And Chet Gibbs. And an original altered wheelbase car, 1964 Plymouth, the Jayhawk. Chet, how you doing? Well, for those of you that can see inside this car, talk about authentic. That is pretty authentic. Sunday. This was the cry heard over Chicago Lane Airways in the mid-1960s. Loud radio ads shouted at the listener to come out to US 30 drag strip in Gary, Indiana to see the new radically modified stock car duke it out in the quarter mile. It was a whole very proficient. In fact, this will be the pairing. This was the pairing that yesterday in the zombie racing entry, the Pontiac from Hell, it says on the front, and he kind of stole the show with that stout burnout yesterday that went almost to the 8th mile. Outstanding. And this is the original Bob Sullivan Barracuda funny car called Pandemonium. Now owned by Ken Chase. And the Pandemonium actually was going to make a pass yesterday. Had some difficulty. We hope that perhaps today. The Revolution front engine dragster. How you doing? Welcome to Norwalk Raceway. Looks like we've got sprayed a little bit of nitrous on you. Yeah. Take a little whip, ladies and gentlemen. You ought to get a laugh out of that laughing gas. Back in the 60s, these guys used to drive with one hand on the wheel. New Alter's a very unruly beast, high center of gravity. This one powered by a rendition of the Chrysler Hemi. And of course, nitromethane and alcohol, the choice of fuels in these vehicles. Owner driver of the car, Don, welcome to the Superstock reunion. And where are you from? Ontario, California. They brought this thing all the way from California, ladies and gentlemen, for your viewing pleasure. And believe me when I tell you, Rod Hope is the driver this weekend and bring it forward. Let everybody see what a AA fuel altered was all about. Now, can you imagine about 2,000 horsepower strapped to about 90 inches of wheelbase with a center of gravity about 2 feet off the ground? This baby really rocks and rolls.
It's the most exciting thing I could ever imagine. I'll tell you, there is
liking this car, and that's what makes it so exciting. Not only are they cars with a personality of their own, but they're real exciting to watch, and they're even more exciting to drive.
Well, 130 first round at Ron. What do you thank you for bringing this gorgeous rendition all the way from California, and thank you for keeping the memory of what was alive here at the Superstock Reunion 1998. Yep, this car will be competing in the Mr. Gasket AA Fuel Classic here today.
It's clouded up just a little bit here in Norwalk, Ohio, but that hasn't deterred any of the activities at the Flowmaster Superstock Reunion. Welcome back to NRP, everyone, as we continue our coverage. I'm Ted Jones, and we're down on Manufacturers Midway. They have one of those here, too. As a matter of fact, Drag Racing Monthly has a display here where you can sign up and get yourself a subscription to Drag Racing Monthly. And you might know we'd find the two guys who are responsible for this event down here. Steve Collison, the first one, the editor of Drag Racing Monthly. Steve, this thing goes way back to the Superstock and Drag Illustrated days, right?
Yes, it does, Ted. It goes back to 1965 when our magazine hosted the first Superstock Nationals at York Raceway, York Dragway. It basically featured all the factory Superstock cars and AFX cars, and it had the single largest one-day attendance of any drag race in the history of the universe. And we still refer to that as the Woodstock of drag racing, because literally hundreds, well, not hundreds, but thousands of people came and they knocked down the fences, and it was just like Woodstock. It was really a tremendous race.
You guys weren't ready. Matter of fact, you raced all night.
That's exactly right. I think the racing finally ended about 5 o'clock in the morning. It was so crowded, there was no crowd control, that the fans were actually lining the drag strip, and the cars were like, as they would go down the track, the fans would like part and then close in behind the cars. It was a very scary thing.
That is now just an airport. It's gone away. The event went away. When did you resurrect it?
Actually, Frank Spittle resurrected it with the 30th anniversary of the Superstock Nationals in 1995.
And Frank Spittle, the guy that's responsible for putting this together, why?
Because these guys are my heroes, and I want to see them recognized in a way that they deserve to be recognized.
All right, now every year we induct 20 into the Superstock Hall of Fame, and it's going to top out at 100. The number one question that everybody out there has to wonder is, where do you find these guys, Frank?
I spend about $1,000 in a 6-month period each year trying to track these people down, and it's time-consuming, but it's very rewarding to me.
And tracking them down is a difficult job because they're doing everything now except drag race.
Most of them are. That's very true. It's hard to find some of them because some of them don't want to be found.
All right, to find out more about that, we talked to the inductees this year into the Hall of Fame to find out what they're doing. Let's take a look at that right now. What are they doing now?
Well, I race a real 1968 Hemi Barracuda and Superstock stick.
I work for Prolong Super Lubricants, that other product. And it's just the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. That plus the Superstock reunion thing and being inducted. But we're a sponsor. It's an engine treatment. It's not the next Microsoft by any means. But everybody in the world is going to be using Prolong here before long.
As of last Friday, I retired from Winnebago Industries.
Well, I'm in the real estate business. I was in the real estate business, and I stayed in the real estate business, and I still am.
I'm barrel racing horses.
Quarter horses?
Quarter horses.
Out west?
Out west.
Well, I'm still in the trash business.
I'm having a great time in the Florida Keys. I've obtained a captain's license in sports fishing, and it's now my second career.
The Superstock Drag Racing Hall of Fame held their induction ceremonies. Let's salute those people now, including Gil Kirk, founder of the famous Rod Shop, Big John Mazmanian, you know him from the Supercharged Gas Wars, Gene Snow, IHRA and NHRA Top Fuel Champion, Akron Arlen Banky, who drove those Superstock Mopars, Ralph Moody of the famous Holman and Moody Ford engine and racing team, Fast Eddie Sharpman, we met him a little earlier. He ran Mercury's. Carol Bunny Burkett, the funny car world champion. Judy Lilly from out west, who drove super stock Mopars to fame with NHRA. And Jim Wangers, the father of the Pontiac GTO. Also inducted were Jack Wurst, Mr. 5 and 50 super stock racer. 240 Gordy Bonnet, the first man to run 240 mile per hour. And Wayne Gap of the famous Gap and Jack Roush team. Also, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, the winningest drag racer in the history of the sport. Also, these people could not attend but were inducted into the Hall of Fame, and yours truly was awarded the George Hearst Memorial Journalism Award.
machines, and I might... The wheelbase factory experimental race cars in heads-up drag racing here at the 1998 Superstock reunion. A side-by-side battle of fuel-injected, methanol-burning, Hemi-powered 1964 Plymouth Belvedere, 65 Plymouth Belvederes that includes over in the Summit Lane a car that, for a brief period in 1965, was the quickest of all funny cars. Yes, believe it or not, if you're used to watching John Force in competition in 1998, in fact, you'll see him here in just a few weeks. These cars gave birth to the machine that you know today as the nitro-burning funny car back in the sports wildest era. You can ask about any hardcore fan, they'll tell you. Jim Paulson over at the Summit Lane, backing up the James Speed equipment Plymouth that was originally driven by Louisianan Leonard Hughes, who's probably best known as the crew chief part of the fabled Candies and Hughes race team that dominated drag racing here at Norwalk Raceway Park with 6 consecutive funny car and top fuel victories during the World Nationals. The Jake Speed equipment machine at that time ran the 8.6 second zone. Now these cars still rely heavily on factory equipment, all steel bodies, no real aftermarket body panels on these machines. And it's the tires on the starting line. Create the majority of their rotating mass back on the rear wheels. And that helped traction back into the era. Didn't even exist. These over the starting line burnouts, by the way, were part of the ritual to try and make up for that lack of traction. It's the drivers back to the earliest. The Jayhawker of Gibbs originally campaigned out of the state of Kansas, as you may expect, and the Jake Speed equipment machine that at one time was the world's quickest funny car. Stage up for the first round battle in their match today. Seconds at over 130 miles per hour and a great top-end charge from probably some of the most unaerodynamic race cars ever designed. Cars like a brick. But look at the top end and the difference in performance with the exact same equipment. 9.77 seconds. Across the finish line in what I would guess is probably the quickest and fastest one of his career. But the vast majority of you know Fast Eddie is the man who turned Jack Shaw Pontiac out of Cleveland, Ohio into a household name in drag racing beginning in the mid-1950s and a career that lasted until the mid-1970s in stock, super stock, gas coupe and sedan, funny car, and later pro stock competition. This car is an original twin four-barrel, 426 cubic inch Hemi-powered Dodge Dart produced by the Hearst Corporation for Chrysler back in 1968. It is acknowledged to be one of the single highest horsepower cars ever produced in this country, over 700 horsepower with carburetors and
Welcome back to Norwalk, Ohio. This week's edition of Inside Drag Racing. Hi again, everyone. I'm Ted Jones, and you're looking at a 1968 Hemi Dart, one of the terrors of the drag strip. They're still very active, you know, in the NHRA and IHRA Superstock Eliminator. They run Superstock A automatic with the famous 727 Chrysler transmission. And this particular Hemi Dart, a nice-looking one, is driven by Ed Sharpman. Wait a minute. Could it be the original fast Eddie Sharpman? Yep. It's him. He's at it again. Eddie, you're in a Mopar with a Hemi. You don't know anything about Mopars. You drove Fords and Mercurys.
Well, that was quite a long time ago. You know, we quit racing for Lincoln Mercury in the early 70s, and I had to find a job. And went out and I ended up buying a Dodge dealership in about 1979. And I retired from drag racing then, and I hadn't been racing in 21 years. So, of course, I'm going to race the stuff that I sell. And Chrysler's been awful good to me over the years, and my dealership does real well. I'm very proud of the job we've done there in Cleveland.
Well, let's tell people where they can find you. It's Great Northern Dodge, North Olmsted, Ohio, right?
Yeah, it's a suburb of Cleveland. We're real close to the airport on the west side of Cleveland.
All right, and you run that now. Why did you get back into drag racing? Why get back behind the wheel?
Well, when we opened the dealership, we hired quite a few people that were familiar with performance and racing, and these guys have been bugging me for 20 years. Come on, boss, let's go racing again. You know, and I said, well, yeah, well. And finally they convinced me, and Jim Halloran is one of the guys he's an ex-drag racer. And Jim's been awful helpful in getting this thing put together. So it's quite a bit of work to put these cars together nowadays. They're pretty high-tech.
All right, you're into Superstock A automatic, which is about the kind of ET and speed you ran back when you were in Pro Stock.
Yeah, it seems like it's a takeoff of what I used to do, but I still had to go to the Roy Hill Driving School to get the hang of it again. And it took me 3 or 4 days before I really got used to going 8-second car at 150. It's quite a bit different than going 55 mile an hour down the highway.
Now, any aspirations of going ahead and stepping up into a 6-second Pro Stock car?
None whatsoever. These cars right here are enough work, and I'm going to keep this as a hobby, and we really enjoy going out on the weekends and meeting the fans and having fun at the drag strip.
Hey, Eddie's really serious about this thing. This is not an exhibition vehicle. It's a serious drag race car. It's an Ed Quay car. He has an onboard computer. He monitors everything and then does a printout just like a top fuel dragster after each run. Of course, Ray Barton, the king of Hemis, he's the modern day Jake King, that is, built this engine. And take a look at this intake manifold. Have you ever seen anything that custom in your life? You know, they have to run the original carburetors, and here they are running in the low 9s with the original carburetors and a Hemi engine. Absolutely incredible. Highly competitive. We'll keep an eye on Fast Eddie here on Inside Drag Racing.
The color be gone. Chrysler heats the tires. And there's Malcolm Durham's second-generation driver at the wheel of the Strip Blazer. Now, around 1964-5, you could have seen Roger Lindemood race against Malcolm Durham's Strip Blazer, but never in machines like this. As I pointed out earlier, in the Summit Lane, you are looking at a type of car that has no equal. It is a one-of-a-kind vehicle that cannot technically fit into any known drag racing class. But it may have a partner if we can talk Gene Snow into building one, I can tell you that. And the motor coming apart on the Color Me Gone machine, but Durham gets right back in the throttle. Look at Bernard Durham. Truly determined run by Bernard Durham. That's great. That you could actually paint onto your rear tires. But it wasn't until 1968 that 1 or 2 teams began experimenting with different liquid compounds where they would actually do a burnout to try and heat and clean and make sticky those big rear tires. He's got another great one going. Dickie Estevez in the Warbucks Falcon 767. won the NHRA U.S. National Stop Fuel Bike title. It had already dominated the motorcycle-only events around the country. But look closely as this thing goes back behind the starting line, and you will see that as opposed to today's state-of-the-art, aerodynamically assisted top fuel motorcycles, this thing is nothing more than 2 nitro-burning engines, 2 wheels, and some fool steering it. Marion himself told us this morning that there was no need to put any frills on these bikes, and he pointed out that it runs pretty much as quick as most of the Harleys do today with all their tricks. One of the 2-wheeled greats in the sport of drag racing, watching his son head down the track at the 1998 Super Stock Reunion. Leaning hard to keep the bike up, the motor coming apart and on. Leaning hard to keep the bike up, the motor coming apart and on. With the car all over the racetrack, and there was some kind of problem going on over in the other lane with the pandemonium car. I don't know what it was. And Ken Chase is going to be shut off on the starting line, I think because of the rain is what it is. You can feel those sprinkles, and I think they're going to want him to shut down just because of the sprinkles hitting the car. They obviously don't want to take any risks.
Let's take a look right now at Super Stock Reunion Finals. Pro Nostalgia Jim Sellers, 409 Chevrolet, going off against Tony DePillo out of Dayton, Ohio, with that 64 Dodge. Give the win to the 409 955, 141 miles per hour. A lot faster than they did it in the old days, I can tell you that. Frank Spittle had a special class for the Midwest Nostalgia Superstock guys, and in the final it was Lynn Grimsley from Wooddale, Illinois, against Bill Colbert from Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. A pair of Mopars to do battle. Give the win to Grimsley with a 1060, 127 miles per hour. This is what they called regular bracket. Remember Nick Iarussi with the Godzilla 55 Chevrolet? Well, he came up against Rodney Horde with a 64 Thunderbolt Ford. The Ford would pick up the win, 992 to a losing 993. Very close drag race. Just how close was it? Let's take one more look at the instant replay. You can see the big 427 Ford nosed out Iarussi barely at the finish line. The muffled bracket, a father and son duo, the two ugliest cars on the ground. Mick LeCompte against Joe LeCompte. Mick, the son, is over in the far lane, a pair of Pontiacs that need a paint job. Mick picked up the win. Oh, how close can you get? 1172 to 1206. It was really closer than that, though, as Mick put a 571 bulb on the old man. Picked up the victory. Look how close this one was. Who do you think won? Next, the comp eliminator final, just like the good old days. Greg Grubel from Port Clinton, Ohio, against Rich Bernard. Just like the old days of comp eliminator, does the dragster have enough to get the gasser? No! Greg Grubel, 1062 with that little Chevy. Nostalgia Superstock, Wes McCracken, Alan Adam made it down to the final. Watch the 66 Nova in the far lane. Let's see if he has enough. McCracken picked it off with a 1047, 125 miles per hour. Mr. Gasket, AA Fuel Dragster Classic, not Top Fuel, AA Fuel Dragsters, just like we used to do. Against Frank Parks. Parks with a gate job on Dunlap, picks up the win. Jones here. Thanks for watching. So long, everyone.